Welcome to jQuery Beyond the Basics. I'm Eric Steinborn. I've presented a intro to jQuery session before, and it was pretty well received, I think. So Jim asked me to come and do another one. So here I am. This is an HTML5 presentation. I'm using Chrome, not Firefox, because Chrome has these awesome, cool slidey transitions here. Firefox doesn't have those yet. If you want to follow along, we have a live link, the Google Docs zip file, which includes the HTML file, all of the example files, and the NYS forum link. I'm not sure if that's up yet, but this link will be the proper link. The live version will be up forever. This is just hosted on the criminal justice website right now. The three things that we're going to be covering today are we're going to be covering tracking custom events using Google Analytics, creating a featured content slider, a little part of it slides, so I'm still allowed to call it a slider. And we're going to submit our forms using Ajax rather than having page loads. To navigate this presentation, if you're navigating it from the webinar, you're going to left and right or mouse wheel up and down to go to the different slides. You're going to Control plus or Control minus to zoom in and out if you want to see things bigger. Touch Control if you're on a mobile device, not really on the webinar, but and if you enter in the Konami code, which is up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, John Locke will come out, and if you press L, he shoots laser beams out of his eyes. So now let's get on to my old presentation is listed here. I have it on SlideShare for the slides, Vimeo for the video. It's dangerous to go alone, so please, if you haven't learned my jQuery intro yet, go ahead and watch that. It's really awesome. Today, concerning accessibility, throughout this presentation, you're going to see image tags without width, height, alt attributes, CSS that will not print, a whole bunch of stuff that for what we're doing here, we're not concerned with accessibility today, because jQuery can be used in an accessible way, but in order to, there's only so much space and so much time to give you guys the most bang for your buck. So feel free to save your accessibility questions till the end. If you're on the free webinar, go ahead and ask your question now. Jim will go ahead and take those, collect them, and then we'll get to them at the end. At the end of each the end of each part. So I love jQuery. This little zeros and ones, a binary actually spells out jQuery. All right, I get it. I'm a geek. So now here's what we're going to do. I need something that's going to, I have external links that I need to track through my Google Analytics, because Google Analytics does not track them by default. I need to track document downloads because, again, Google Analytics doesn't. I'm not going to say that again because none of these things they track. I need to track video views, and I need to track the same link that's in different locations. So maybe on the top of my page or the bottom of my page on two different pages. So what I'll show you here is how Google Analytics works for custom events. I was going to load this earlier, but I didn't. Luckily, I have internet through my phone. So here we go. I'm going to show, we'll go from the 6th to the 5th. These are the custom events that we have tracked for DCJS. Now what you'll see here is you'll see a big spike. That was just me testing. That's a lot of these tests here. But Google Analytics tracks three different things. Well, four different things, but we're only going to cover three. The fourth is a value that you can set, a number, be it 1 to 1,000,000, doesn't matter. It just adds weight to your link clicks. It tracks categories, event actions, and labels. Now, they don't necessarily have to mean anything to you. There's just three different sections that you can track through with Google Analytics. So for me, we have a category called NY Alert. We want to know how many people sign up for NY Alert, which is a thing where you can get alerted via email anytime a sex offender moves into your location. So we want to track how many people click that. So our category is NY Alert. Our action is sign up link. So I'm going to click on sign up link, and then the label for each of those, we have a button on our page. We have a link that clicks from our sex offender registry, and we have one that's a text link at the bottom of the page. So this button and this text are both on the same page, but we're tracking it 2 different times because I want to see how many people, and as you can see, our button is getting much more traffic than our text link at the bottom. Just to show you what that looks like. Our sex offender registry. This text link right here, if I clicked on this, it would track from NSOAR. I'm going to copy this link so I don't give myself an extra track. And then on the new NY Alerts page, we have a button at the top, which is button. And then we have a text link at the bottom, which is text. So I want to track all of those. So how do we do that? Well, first off, the code that I'm going to show you guys today is only tested with the Google Analytics asynchronous script. The original Google Analytics script that they actually just stopped they stopped saying that you should use their old script and you should be using their asynchronous script because it's much faster, it loads quicker, and it doesn't, basically what happens is while your page is loading, the Google Analytics script is sort of loading in the background, but it's not interrupting your page load, so your page performance isn't brought down. So if you go to this website with the slides on it, this is the asynchronous code here. Just replace your UA value and insert it right before your body tag for the best performance. Now the links that we need to track. I need to track a link that links to an external website that says I like Minecraft, a second link called TARDIS WMV that's going to track a video link, and a document link for Civilization 5 Anonymous, which I'm not part of, but I should be. And then I have my imaginary friend has a link to Minecraft as well. I want to track his link separately than mine. So I want to set up a thing that says, my link or his link. jQuery 1.4.3 just released, I believe, last week. And jQuery 1.4.3 added the jQuery metadata plugin into it, sort of. It still works as if it were the metadata plugin, but what it does is it tracks things a little bit differently than the metadata plugin did. Sorry, I said metadata 3 different ways, but I say metadata. All right, here we go. Now, jQuery 1.4.2 requires the metadata plugin as a separate plugin. Now, I don't recommend using any older versions of jQuery. I mean, if you have, stuff that relies on that, I strongly suggest each time a new version of jQuery comes out that you should be testing it with your code if you have the time, even if you don't have the time, because a lot of the stuff that each revision of jQuery comes out makes a lot of stuff faster. So the way that the jQuery core works with grabbing metadata is this. You have a div and you set up custom attributes. Data-build, data-version, data-options. That can say data-my mom. It doesn't matter. It can say whatever you want it to say. And inside of your double quotes can have whatever value you want. The only thing that you should keep in mind here is that if you set something to true or false or a number, the jQuery plugin, or the jQuery core with the metadata plugin built into it will now change that from the string false or true to the Boolean false or true. So if somebody wants to sign up and make their name false, it would set their name to a Boolean value. So there's a little bit of trickiness going on there. And with numbers, it's going to convert that to an integer as well. So it's not going to be a string anymore. So there's a little bit of weirdness going on there. So this actual thing here should actually not be in quotes. I just found this out on the jQuery podcast the other day. So how do we call our plugin? So what we're going to do is we're going to take all of our links, we're going to add a class of GA event tracker to them. That's just how we're going to call them with jQuery. Then we're going to create a data-GA attribute. And then inside of that, we're going to do our event category, our event action, and our event label. These are all names that I created. You can make them say whatever you want. Now, you'll notice that the attributes inside of the data-GA attribute, or the name value pairs inside of the data GA attribute are inside of single quotes and the name value pairs are in double quotes. That has to be the way that you do it. If you do it the other way, it will not work, and then you'll be coming after me saying, why is this not working? And I'll say, I told you that it has to be single quotes. And to call it, what we're going to do is we're going to create a plugin, and the way that we call that plugin is we're going to call our class name .GAEventTracker, which is going to pull all of our GAEventTracker classes that we have listed, and we're going to call a GAEventTracker the function that we're going to create. One other thing that I should mention is that I do have some notes on different pages, and if you look at the top right of each slide, you'll see that there's a little thing that says note. If you press the number 2, that will fade your notes in. This is for if you're looking at it at home. I haven't really done very many notes for the live presentation, and this one just says, you know, be careful and use single quotes. So how do we make a plugin? Well, we have to create closure so that we protect the $sign, so that if we're running MooTools or we're running Prototype or we're running some other library that uses the $sign attribute, then what's going to happen is this encapsulates all of our code so that the $sign is safe and it's a nice little home inside of our closure. So what we do is we create a function called $FN GAEventTracker, and that's the name of our function. That's how we call our plugin. And then we create a function inside of there. Then we're going to create our defaults. Because if somebody doesn't set in their attribute, if somebody doesn't set category, label, or title, right? Those are the three. Category, action, type, label, right on the screen. Okay. If they don't set that, then it will send undefined to Google, and Google won't know what to do with it. So we don't want to send undefined to them. So we're going to set the defaults to empty strings. Then what we're going to do is return this .each, and by returning this, that maintains chainability. And we know with jQuery you can chain things. So you can do a myElement.css and then .fadeOut, right? And you can just set that chain up. If you don't return this, then that chainability is broken. So right now, I could call, right on here, I could call myElement.GAEventTracker and then set the CSS to red because I've returned this, and then my code is going to go inside of here. Now what we want to do is we want to get the attributes that we set in our code. Now the way that we do that is we set a to grab them, we set a variable called $data equal to this, which is our we've created, which refers to our anchor tag with the GAEventTracker that we're calling the plugin on. And we find the data attribute that's data-GA. And that's how we pull that up there with this .data.GA. Now what we do is we get our options by calling our $data, because that has the cached reference to data.GA, and we call .evtCategory, .evtAction, and .evtLabel. Now let's say I only set category and action, because you need to at least set category in order for this plugin to actually give you any usable data. Let's say I only set category, I didn't set action and label. EVT action and EVT label are going to come up undefined because I didn't set those in the attributes. So what we do is we extend with a jQuery function called extend, and what we do is we extend the default that we set into the things that the new variables that we just did. So let's say EVT category is good, but EVT action, EVT label are undefined. Now because we're doing this extend, we're setting the defaults as the default, and if any of these O values, so O EVT category, O EVT action, and O EVT label, if any of those are undefined, then keep the default, so that now we have a fully filled out string that we're going to be able to send to Google. And that's explained right down here. So basically, if O is equal to undefined, then O is equal to default, or else O is equal to O. Google Analytics has a special code that you have to send it in order to track the things properly. And the way that we do that is we create this string, which starts with underscore GAQ.push. And then inside of these, it has a track event, which says, all right, Google, I want to track this event. And then we tell it to include our option.evt category, .evt action, and .evt label. So now, this is going to create the code that you'll see here. So my original HTML code, my event category is set to external link, my event action is set to Minecraft, and my event label is set to my link. So I'm sending to Google track event, external link, Minecraft, my link. Those are the three things that I send to Google. We don't have to know what Google does with that. We just know that it works. When we send this to Google, Google goes, all right, I'm going to track this event properly, and it's going to work properly. So our end result, we have four anchor tags that all have a class of GA event tracker. We call our plugin by calling .GA event tracker in our jQuery call, and we call .GA event tracker on them. It takes the data GA attribute that we have all of our stuff set to, so our event category, our external link, or our event category, our event action, our event label, and it creates Google Analytics compatible code that Google Analytics really likes and will give us the output that I showed you earlier. So does anybody have any questions about what I just went over?
You set the event up in Google ahead of time, or does it dynamically create it?
Google dynamically creates a new event for you, so you don't have to set anything up in Google. I could send Google a new category called Eric is awesome, and it's going to create the whole thing for it. And just like Google Analytics works, it'll be like updated tomorrow. Anybody else?
Can you bring in the actual libraries by virtual include, or the analytics and jQuery?
The only what I include jQuery by I refer to local jQuery on our servers. So I have a JS folder, and I refer to jQuery 1.4.3.js. And for the Google Analytics, I use this asynchronous snippet here. On every page, yes. Yep, every page loads our Google Analytics snippet, because every page, we want to track every page that's on our site. We want to know where everybody's going. So that Google Analytics tracking code is already installed on every one of our pages, as well as jQuery. We use jQuery on every single one of our pages at DCJS. So, but say you only wanted to, say you didn't have Google Analytics set up for your whole website, you just wanted to track these custom events. All you would have to do is call jQuery and use this asynchronous snippet for Google Analytics, and make sure you have a Google Analytics account set up, and you can be tracking events today. Anybody else? All right, on to the next one. Now, let's create a featured content slider. I've been told that it's not a slider, but I disagree. Now, what we need to do is it needs to be scalable, so I need to have a bunch of things that are going to change, or just a couple things that are going to change. That'll be explained in a second. It needs to be animated. It needs to slide. It has to have a dynamic background image and a dynamic description text. So how do we do it? Basically, the main idea that we're trying to go here is we want to replace an image and a description. And the way that we do that is, for all intents and purposes, right now what we're going to do is we're going to, is that all intents and purposes or all intensive purposes? I think it's all intents, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's all intents and purposes? Gotcha. Yeah, see? You learn something new every day, but it doesn't, it's old and the new thing. Yeah, yeah. What John said. What John said. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this image. We're going to change that. We're going to change the source attribute to Minecraft.jpg instead of default.jpg. We're going to change the descriptions HTML, which is anything inside of here, all this green stuff, to H2 Minecraft for the win. So basically, a demo of that is here's my default image. Here's my default text. When I click this, it changes the image to Minecraft, and it changes the text to Minecraft for the win. If I reload my page, back to the normal content, click it, Minecraft for the win. So our original content, now the HTML is a bit more involved than our last demonstration, as well as the jQuery is going to be a little bit more involved. So I'm going to try to go a little bit slower through this part here, and just so you know, this main image part here, this is all of the code inside of the main image. And let me just show you what it looks like. This is the main image, okay? And these on the these little side things here, these are our image thumb LIs, okay? That's what I'm referring to when I say main image and image thumbs. So in our main image, we have an image set to Minecraft.jpg, and we have in the block we have an H2 tag with a P tag inside and a little image description to tell you what it is. So we want to change the background image, and we want to change the content description with the content from here. So in each LI, we have an anchor tag that's set to a JPEG. That's set to a JPEG and is showing you a small JPEG thumbnail. And then inside of that, we have a block, and that block is actually hidden with CSS because it's on the left side. We don't want to show everything that's inside of there. So what we do is we want to include everything except that small that small tag. We don't want this tag to show up, and I do that with CSS. So again, the CSS you're not really going to be able to see here because I'm not showing you the CSS. You can download all the demos later to see all of the CSS and how it works properly, but it's hidden in the demos here. So how do we replace that? The great thing about jQuery is that you can add a click event to anything. It doesn't have to be an anchor. It doesn't have to be a button. It doesn't have to be, it can be whatever you want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a click function onto an LI. Now that LI is this block that you see here. This whole block, that is the LI. So I want, when I click on that, I want to change the main image. I want to change the source of that to what I just clicked on, which is the this in parentheses, and I want to find the anchor tag inside of that, which is right here. That's original content. So I want to find this LI, and then I want to find the anchor tag, which is this first anchor tag here, the only anchor tag that's in this whole list item, and I want to get its href attribute. Then what I want to do is get the block, take the block code, and I want to change the whole HTML in it, and then I want to find the LI's block, this right here, and I want to grab all of this HTML stuff, and I want to insert it into my main image. So I'm finding all the stuff, everything that's on the right here. All of this is coming from, well, this. All this is coming from my LIs that I'm clicking. The stuff on the left is where it's populating to, and that's going to be populating into my main image, which you'll see here. Now, to start off, I have my main image set, and these LIs. Now, when I click on this simple beginnings, it's going to change the text content in my description block, and it's going to change the image. Now, you see how it had a little bit of a lag there? The text changed and then the image changed. We're actually going to talk about that later. We're going to fix that and make sure that it loads all of our images first. One note about these demos: when you click on a demo to interact with it, the left and right arrow keys no longer work because this is actually done in an iframe. So just click on, you know, the title, and then you can left and right. Now what we want to do is we want to animate that description block that says simple beginnings, trees can be punched to provide you with wood. We want to animate that when we click on another item. We want to animate that. We want to slide it back in underneath all those little list items that we had there. And then we want to change the content so the user can't see it, and then we want to slide it back out. So the way that we do that is when we click on our LI, we're going to animate the description div 230 pixels left over 500 milliseconds. And now here's the awesome thing that I've been actually using this a lot more since just in the recently I've needed to use it more. I set a callback function to my animate function. So this callback function does not fire until my animation is done. So normally if you set up a dot animate and then say you set up another dot animate to animate it back after you've animated it in, and all the stuff that you did inside of here, this image, changing the image and changing the description text, all of that would be happening while the animation is going on. So what this does is this says, all right, after you've moved this to the left, I want you to change the image like we did before. I want you to change the description text that's in the block, and then I want you to animate it back out after it's done. And jQuery will do all of this in sequence. Now what I want to do is I want to replace the content that's in there the way that we did it before. Remember, we did it in a pretty simple way because we didn't have any animations going on. Now that we have animations going on, we're going to say, all right, so whenever I refer to this in parentheses and $, again, that refers to this LI that I just clicked, which has our anchor tag in it that has a link to the image, and it has all of our description stuff. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate the opacity down to 0 over 550 seconds and animate it to the left 230 pixels. Oh, no, I'm animating the image to a 0 opacity. So I'm going to fade out the image and then fade it back in right here. So we set up our animation so it shoots my description into the right like this. Okay? And then it fades that image in. So here we go. Our attribute, we set the source of the main image attribute to this LI, which is what we created for here. We find the anchor, we change the href just like we did before. Then we animate the opacity back to 1 because it's opacity 0 right now. Then what we do is we change the HTML to the block HTML, and then we animate it back out to the left of 0, because right now it's at left negative 230. We're going to animate it out to 0, which is going to add 230 to it. Now I want to show users that you're hovering over something. The easiest way to do that is to set a hover, and the other thing that I want to do is I want to show them that the one that they just clicked on is active, because if we go back and you click on these, we don't know which one's active. We don't know what one you just clicked on other than the fact that these all match together, and we know that people on the internet don't read. So what we're going to do is we're going to check and say if this is active, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to, by default, I'm going to set this LI, I'm going to give it a class of active. So when the page first loads, this is active. So if you click on this, then I don't want you to do anything. I want you to return false. But if this is not active, so if you're clicking on the second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever it is, then I want you to do all the stuff that we just talked about, animating it to the left, fading out the main image, changing the main image, changing the content, then fading everything and sliding it all back in. And then what I want you to do is I want you to remove the class active from all LIs, because I don't feel like checking and seeing which one has the li and then removing it and then adding active to the one that you just clicked on, which is by calling this.add class active, and then I'm going to return false as well, because I don't want it to because these little guys are actually images that the thumbnails are actually wrapped around an anchor tag. And if I click that and I didn't put return false on, I'd be going to, as you can see on the bottom here, I'd be going to images tree.jpg. And then what I'm going to do is, because we're maintaining chaining here, so I've said, when I click this, I want you to do all this stuff. And then when you hover over each one of these, I want you to add class of hover. And when you don't, when you hover off of it, I want you to remove class of hover. So to do that, you'll see it adds a little bit of a gray background color. This little arrow is being put in there with CSS because that's what the class of active means. So when I click on simple beginnings, the arrow moves to the simple beginnings, it slides out our description block, it fades out our image, it changes our image, then it fades back in the new description block. Now, I worked really hard on these images. Okay, I spent a good 3 to 4 minutes taking these screenshots so that you guys could see them. I want you to be able to see the whole image if you want to. And right now, there's no way to do that. Right now, if I just click on these, you see only this part of the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a toggler. So on that description div, I'm going to create a toggler, and I'm going to give it a class of collapse. And I'm going to say, if left value is less than 0, which we know that when we've faded our image or our description block into the left, it now has a left value of negative 230 pixels. So that would apply. So when it's in now, or now, or now, this is going to fire. And what that's going to do is that's going to animate it to the left of 0, so that's going to animate it in, and then it's going to remove the class of show. Because right now, if we do it backwards, it's this. If you click on it, so don't look at this. If you click on it, it's just a little image here that says hide. So when you click on that, I want you to animate the description block left 235 pixels over 550 seconds, and then I want you to add the class show, which changes the text from hide, or it's an image, changes the image from an image that says hide to an image that says show. But if the image if it's hidden, then what we want to do is we want to animate it to the left of 0, so we want to show it, and then we want to remove the class show so that it's now going to say hide again. So open if closed, close if opened. And we want to make it opaque because I still want to be able to see my image even when that text in the description block is over top of it. So what I'm going to do is because if I just faded, and if I made the description div opaque, as we know with CSS, it's going to make everything inside of that div opaque, which means it's going to make the text opaque, so the text is still going to be, what do we have at 65% opacity. It's going to, so you're going to have a hard time seeing it. We want the image, we want the background to be transparent, but we want the text to really pop out of there. So what we do is we create an opaque BG span that has a CSS background image set to a I think it's like a 80% something opacity image, a ping image, and then we're going to set the CSS with jQuery to an opacity of 0.65. The reason we do this is to make it work with Internet Explorer, because Internet Explorer does not have its own opacity built into it, i.e. 6 and 7, but with jQuery has already figured that out. It's like, oh, this is how we do opacity in IE, so I tell jQuery to do it, and jQuery does it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to animate the opacity to 0 when we click on it, when it's fading out to the left, and we want it to fade in while it's sliding to the right. So you'll see that here. as it's coming out, or as it's hiding itself, it's fading out, and as it's coming back, it's fading in. And you can see our image through here. Now, if I click on hide, it changes to show. Now you see how it sort of goes in there. That's because this is zoomed in. Now, if I click hide here and then click show, show doesn't, or actually there. Click hide. Now, if I click show, it doesn't pop in and out. That's just because I have the slideshow set at a it's zoomed in, so you can't see. So it calculates the things wrong. Anyway, that's how we want to set that. Now, I said before, when you click on one of these things initially, if you don't have the images loaded in, because you're loading, you haven't actually in your HTML specified an image tag for all of these images that you have, because you haven't done that, each time you click and jQuery loads in that new image, jQuery actually has to make an HTTP request to your server. Your server has to respond to it. Your server has to say, okay. Then your browser goes, okay, I'm going to download this now, and now I'm going to show it to you. So what we do is we actually, the wrapper div is just the div that wraps around my whole document. And we're going to append a div called image preloading, which is hidden with CSS because we don't want to have all the images displayed at the bottom. And we do all of the HTTP requests, image tree, JPEG, treehouse, tools, spider, sword, all these things that we want our buttons to link to. We're loading all those at the very beginning of the page load so that we don't have that flash of unstyled content each time that we click on one. So our final code, again, like I say, it's a bit longer than the code that we had for the Google Analytics plugin, but there's a lot more going on. We're not just taking a couple values, creating a string, and then sending it off. This way, we're actually we're doing some animations, we're fading things in and out, we're sliding things in and out, we're changing stuff around. So the end result is, again, remember how I said it needs to have a, what was the word I said? You need to be able to have as many or as little of these as you want. Now, 6 is about the maximum for this specific way that I have it set up. You can edit the CSS and change the height and width of these to make them as big or as small as you want. So I have six items in here right now, and I can make these as many, or I can make the ones on the left as many or as little as I want. And that's me, dressed up as Wolverine, holding a sword.
So that's your real castle?
I created that castle, yeah. That's my castle in the background. And that's a flaming pig. Because in survival multiplayer, they only die by fire. So any questions? No, there's a lot.
There was from the webinar, I was kind of slow on the upload here. This goes back to the Google Analytics. Someone asked, if Google Analytics goes down, do your pages still load?
Cool, right? If Google Analytics goes down, does your page still load? Yes, because you're doing the asynchronous Google Analytics code. Even if you weren't using the asynchronous Google Analytics code and you're using their old code, what would happen is you would just get a bad HTTP request. That's all that's going to happen. And even with the asynchronous code, you're just going to get a bad HTTP request. But as we know, Google has about a 99.98% uptime or something crazy, ridiculous like that. Way more than we have at my work or something. But it's just if Google Analytics goes down, you're golden. You're just not going to get anybody tracking your stuff. Same goes if your website's down. If your website's down, you're not going to be able to track anything. Mark has answered. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? Again, all of the source code that I've created here, you guys can butcher it as much as you want. Grab it, you use it for whatever you're doing, and it's as easy as just changing the image tags, or changing the image href values and changing the description text. So on to the last one. I should have changed that to last. I'm actually going to do that because, check this out. Google Chrome has the same sort of thing as Firefox does, where I can actually change this to last, and now it's done. It's got like a Firebug thing built into it, but it's not as good as Firebug, personally. So now we're going to submit our forms using Ajax. This is probably my favorite thing in the whole wide world, because I hate going to a new page when I hit submit on somebody's thing, and especially if they're already using jQuery. I'm like, you could have just use Ajax. I mean, come on. So what we need to do is we need to have form validation. Sorry, I promised myself I wouldn't drink in the middle of giving a slide. I broke my promise. We need indication that the form is being submitted, so it can't just sit there and wait. And then your user goes, well, I got to click submit again, don't I? Because this isn't working. It needs to inform them of a successful submit and then allow them to resubmit the same form that they just submitted with everything still filled in, or clear the form so that they can submit something, a completely new thing. So our beginning form, we have our form action. This relies on your servers supporting PHP. You can use ASP or JSP probably. I'm not very good at server side stuff, so if you are, you probably know more about this than I do. And we, by the way, this form is very nicely labeled. All the inputs are labeled, and we want to take name, email, and comments for my Minecraft sign-up form. And I want to send them to mailer.php. I'm not going to go into PHP very much because I don't know what most of this crap does. I just know that name, email, and comments need to be proper here. So what I'm doing is I'm sending an email from signup@mcfanpage.com. That's not an actual page. And I'm sending it to me, and then your email is going to come through and it's going to say, this guy sent you an email. So we're going to first off apply the validation plugin. The jQuery validation plugin is really awesome and it's really easy. I'm only going to cover the required attribute for the jQuery the jQuery validation plugin. And that's as easy as adding the class of required to any or all of your inputs, if any or all of your inputs are required. Whichever ones are required, add class required, include your jQuery validation plugin, and now you have a valid form, a form that will check when you hit submit that it's valid, and it will give you errors if it's not. It will tell you which ones are having the errors, etc. And it's easy to call, just call .validate. I gave you the bit.ly link here to basistance.de. I know that this is, I think this is blocked at my work because it's a blog page. So
sometimes just the home page is locked, and you can get down into a content level page. That too, so sometimes you can get through and shit, they block the whole page.
right, okay,
So I can actually get the downloads, I just can't get them all.
nice. So what we're going to do here is this is my form that I have set up. Now just to show you that the validation is working, if I hit submit, it makes the fields red. This is seriously all the code I did. I just added class required to these three things, included the validation plugin, and now I cannot submit this form without it being validated. So I'm just going to, as you can see, I type in ASDF about 1,000 times on this form. Now I'm going to submit. Oh, email was the next one that was invalid. So when I hit submit, it automatically put focus on email and fill this out. You can set up a class of required space email, and it will actually validate your email. There's a little bit of a wonky stuff going on with that, where some people have weird formatted email addresses, pluses or whatever, that doesn't really work. That's why I only did required to show you guys these things. Now if I hit this, I hit submit, now it's going to say successful submit. Now if we were on another page and this wasn't an iframe, I would have just reloaded my page, I would have just loaded in my new page with all my theming, all my redrawing of the browser, and got to a page that said successful submit. And now, normally this page would look better. But let's submit it with Ajax. The way that we do that, we call our contact form because we set it to an ID of contact form, camel case. We call .validate to make sure that it's valid because we're using all of our class equals required on our three input fields. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say when we submit our contact form, right there, .submit is a jQuery method that you can use. We call function e. Remember our e.prevent default from last time? That makes sure that it doesn't actually go to what you told it to go to. We're going to create a variable. Well, we're going to create 3 variables, well, 4. Name, email, comments. By doing that, we're going to grab the value of our name field, the value of our email field, and the value of our comments field. Then we're going to create a data string. This is the data string that our mailer.php file needs to be sent in order to parse the things properly. And to do that, we send name equals our name value, and email equals our email value, and comments equals our comments value. And those are never going to be sent as undefined because we have the jQuery validation plugin in here. Then we're going to use what's a built-in jQuery method called Ajax. Ajax has a bunch of different functions that are associated with it. This is there are options. I'm sorry. There's a type for us is going to be post. There's get and post. The data that we're going to be sending is our data string that we've filled out. So name, email, comments, and the URL that we're going to be sending it to is mailer.php. Mailer.php again is already configured to get all of this stuff. We're just sending it the way that mailer.php needs it. And then we're going to prevent the default submit action. Because that's what we're preventing in this scenario. We've called function, and all of this code in here fires off on the submit method. So by calling e.prevent default, we're preventing it from submitting. We're actually doing it with Ajax instead. So to do that, I'll just show you really quick here. Now when I hit submit, this form's just submitted with Ajax. But I have no idea that it's been submitted with Ajax unless if I checked I checked my resources panel. I think it'll show me. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Let's make that much smaller. Now, you might have seen a little blip down here. I have it set to tempmailer.html because we don't support PHP on our web servers at work. So this sends it to tempmailer.html. So it actually did make our Ajax request to tempmailer.html, and we should have gotten successful submit back. And you can see here, this is the content that we got back. So we got back, thumbs up dude, successful submit. Now we want to let them know that they succeeded in sending this. We don't just want to have a blank form sitting or a filled out form sitting in front of them. So what we do is I created a div called successful submit that says success, you're now signed up to receive updates, and then I'm going to make my request another link and my made a mistake link. My request another will wipe out the form, allow you to fill it up again. My made mistake will fade the form back in, give you all of the options that you still had filled out, so that you can, my name isn't Barrick, it's Eric, so I'm going to change my name to Eric, resubmit my form, and then I'm golden. So we want to let them know, though, when they click submit, that we're working on it, because we all know that HTTP requests aren't instantaneous. It doesn't happen, immediately. And if you're running on the intranet, it's a lot faster than if you're running on the internet. Again, depends on your speed, etc. I'm telling you everything you already know. But what we want to do is we want to, when they hit submit, because we're calling all of this inside of our contact form submit function that we created over here. I grayed out this stuff because this is stuff that we already covered. It's not as important as this main stuff here. So what we do is we say, I want to take the name field, the email field, the comments field, and the submit button. I want to add a class of disabled to them, which adds some CSS styling, which grays out the background. The background was like a white kind of background. It's going to make it a gray background. It's going to change the text color to a lighter gray as well. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, I actually think I changed this in the final version. But what we're going to do, no, it might be this way. We'll see. What I've done is I've added the attribute of disabled and set it to disabled on the submit button so that they can't click submit again, because we don't want them to send 20 emails because they just keep clicking it. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to append onto my submit button, which is just a button. Inside of that, it says submit. I'm going to append a space, and then I'm going to put a little image in there, a little Ajax loader. It's the same. I use the same one that Facebook uses, and I give it an ID of Ajax loader so I can reference it later when I'm all done sending the form, so I can remove it really easy. Then in my Ajax call, on a success, because remember how we had type, data, and URL? Now there's a success option and a complete option. In success, you create a function, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade out the form container, and then when it's complete, I'm going to fade in my success block, because I called success here. This is a successful submit. That's the one I created right here. I'm going to fade this in nice and slow, and then after it's faded in, I'm going to remove the class of disabled that grays out those fields for name, email, comments, and submit. I'm going to remove my Ajax loader that I just added to the submit button, and then I'm going to remove the attribute disabled, because now this form's hidden from the user. They don't see it now, so I can do all this stuff in the background while this is happening. Now, if they made a mistake, we have our anchors, request another, and made mistake. Now what I did here is this was my original form, but when I wrote this out, and I didn't feel like testing for one thing or another, like did they click mistake, did they click request. I just set up one for request, one for made mistake. What I've actually done, but you'll see here, fade out success div, fade in form, set focus to name field, don't go to pound. Those are the exact same things on both of these functions. To consolidate those, what I've done is I've said if this attribute ID is request another, then reset my form, and then it's done with that if set statement. So only if they clicked on request another will it reset the form. But it still needs to do all that other stuff. It still needs to fade out the success block that says would you like to request another, success, blah blah blah. It fades back in our form container. It puts focus on the name field so that you don't have to, you can just start typing away like Google does. And then it prevents the default action from happening. I like to call this my Voltron statement because it puts many things into one. Now our end result, I'll take a drink here. Our end result is pretty awesome. Again, I can't submit. Name is the first one that's invalid. Email, again, invalid. Comments invalid. Now when everything's valid, I added the actual code in here. I added a set timeout because it sort of happens a little buggy because I'm on a slow connection here. But I set a set timeout, so it's going to wait for like 2 seconds. So you're going to see the image come on after the sending. You're going to see these fields gray out. I'll reset it a couple times so we can see it. And then once all that's done, then it's going to do the function. So here we go. Ready, set, go. Here's our little image. It's loading. The fields got grayed out. Success. You're now signed up to receive updates. Double thumbs up. Now you can need to sign up a friend. That's the link text for reset the form or accidentally hit submit. So what we'll do, I'll show you again. Grays out the fields, adds our little image there. Now that this success has been faded in, it's just removed disabled, the class from all of our image or all of our inputs. So now they're all the proper thing. So when I click accidentally hit submit and it fades my form back in, I'm not going to have that loading image. I'm not going to have the button be disabled. I'm going to have it all ready to go. Now I can just hit submit again. There's my image, grays out the fields. Takes a couple seconds because I set it to set timeout just to show you there, and then you're ready to go. Now, need to sign up a friend, click on it. Again, clears all the fields. All the fields are now empty. I can't submit it. All the validation is still applied. It's a little bit, that got a little bit buggy, set it to comments, maybe because I was on name, but I mean, that's it. That's done. Now your users have submitted a form. They've gone to another page but didn't realize it, and they've had a great experience on your website. They've had things fading in and fading out because people love that kind of stuff. They have a little red boxes that tell them that they were bad, and they have an awesome little image thing that tells them, all right, you know, I am doing something here. I am doing something. Give me a second. So, any questions on the Ajax forum? John from Albany asks, if someone has JavaScript turned off, does the form still validate, or you still need to do server-side validation as well? You would need to do server-side validation because the jQuery validation plugin relies on JavaScript. So you'd have to do server-side validation for that.
And you didn't do anything like that isn't ready to submit button, so it still will submit after the.
Yes, and that, yeah, I didn't change the default I told it to go to I told it to go to mailer.php, which is what it was set to go to initially, but I didn't want it to do its default submit option. So if you had JavaScript disabled and you still had your mailer.php and that was set in your form here, you know, your action is set to mailer.php, your form would still submit properly. But most of the time, you're probably going to want to do your validation through the mailer.php to make sure that you have all of your stuff in there. Again, I don't know jack diddly about PHP other than it makes me sending forms on the websites that I don't design at work awesome and easy. So that's about that.
Well, I'll chime in on that, which is on mailer.php, always make sure that who you're sending the email to is not one of the request variables, not the form, isn't coming from the form, because you'll immediately be a target for somebody to write a robot to submit to that over and over and over again and route spam through your mail server. You really don't even want to put anything in the subject or the body, you know, in the email either, unless you know who it's going to, because depending on what you're doing to strip out XSS and things like that, you could potentially be causing a problem in the email client itself. But certainly if you're sending it to, you know, you or an administrator or something like that, you know, it's acceptable, you know, you just have to be careful about it. Obviously, you need the server-side validation so you're not throwing errors. And then in the case where JavaScript's disabled, when that submit button goes through, you also have to think about, you want mailer.php to send something to the output stream to let them know they successfully submitted the form, and they're not just looking at a blank page. So,
Yeah, well then in my
because did you
this one
just
here.
pull back a chunk of HTML, or was it a full HTML page?
this one just echoes successful submit. The one that I'm using on the demo is just a mailer temp.html file,
Right.
just because that's
But
all
through the
I'm
Ajax, you
using.
just get back a chunk of HTML that
Yeah.
goes into the page.
Yeah.
So that's not a full document. So you just kind of, it's just like we were talking about for setting up for JavaScript enable, disable. You kind of have to have it set up so that it'll work either way.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And just for the people on the webinar that didn't see before, if you enter the Konami code, John Locke jumps up, and if you press L, he shoots laser beams out of his eyes. Any other questions? Just have some references here. First, again, Snakes on Every Plane. Such a good movie. Minecraft, if you guys are interested, it's a cool little game. The jQuery API, cannot recommend them enough. jQuery Mobile Alpha, oh, it is so awesome. It is really, really, really coming along really well. It actually, they're looking at probably putting it in beta hopefully by next year, I think. And it makes all of this happen cross mobile browser. Doesn't matter what browser you're on, it makes it absolutely gorgeous. they have a here's their browser platform list. Like these are all the browsers that they're going to support. They're going to support all the A and B browsers, like Windows Mobile 6.1 through 7, and there's pretty junky clients and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. My bad, webinar. Are we good now? Okay. HTML5 boilerplate, really, really great stuff. Paul Irish. And I'm going to remember it as soon as I see it. Hold on. Divya Manian, I believe. They created this awesome HTML5 boilerplate that is just, the stuff that it does is just awesome. They really solve a lot of issues where using conditional style sheets within your page to load items that aren't blank items, like they're using it on the HTML here. Using conditional style sheets actually blocked things from downloading within Internet Explorer. So they've gone through so many high performance stuff, setting Google Chrome frame up by default, so if any users are on IE, which by the way, Google Chrome frame is now no longer requiring administrative privileges to install on IE machines now. So if you go to a place that has, Google Chrome frame ready to go, and your users don't have administrative privileges, they can still install it, which is absolutely awesome. Just a lot of other little stuff here. It's a good thing to go through. Paul Irish did a big long 40-minute long thing about getting a lowdown in 40 minutes flat, and it's really, really good if you have 40 minutes and you're interested in HTML5 and CSS3 stuff. John Resig's Things You Might Not Know About jQuery. He gave this at the Boku Loft in Boston, Massachusetts. And I probably learned more from this than I've learned through most of the stuff I've been doing in the last year, just from this one video, as well as Douglas Crockford's JavaScript Programming Language 4-part series. He goes over all of the awesomeness about JavaScript and where it came from and who's still doing it, etc., etc. 25 fantastic jQuery techniques, effects for websites, 25 of the best websites for free jQuery tutorials. This, of course, lists, go to the jQuery website, go to this, that, the other thing. Cats Who Code, CSS Tricks is really good. And that's about it. So, if there are no other questions, any